actual act of taking a breath in is inspiration. So because we're here, let's start by thinking about something that you loved, an object, and just I'll give you an example. I was I'm the first of four siblings, and you know when you live in one place for a long time, things accumulate. So we were doing some spring cleaning, or doing some cleaning, and I found this little book. It's like a small diary, only about not much bigger than a matchbook, that insurance agents give away for free. And I was like, oh, it was the same year as I was born. So I just opened it. And in my father's handwriting, he wrote everything that happened to me in the year that I was born. Now, when I think about that, I just, I'm like, no, my dad is a large, very serious looking guy with a low, like a bass voice, like down like that. When like James Earl Jones, like that kind of voice. Like when he speaks, you kind of feel it before you hear it. And just his neat handwriting in this little book. Like one day he there's an entry. She had a cold and her nose ran. And then, the next 2 days, her nose wasn't so stuffy. She slept better. I'm like, when I think about that, I feel that in my chest. So just take a moment and think about an object that you when you can't you feel joy, you feel appreciation, you feel just And whenever you're ready, just take a little bit, and whenever you're ready, just share that with us.
Shall I start?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I have this picture or poster. It's not that big. It's like this. It's in black and white, and it's a dark forest with a white horse, and the horse is, like um, um, uh, doing that, that he stands in 2 feet. I don't know what it's called,
Yeah.
but so it's a very it's just a really beautiful image. I wish I could show you. And I always loved this picture, and I didn't know why, because sometimes you just have something you love and you don't know. And then one day I was pregnant, and it felt like I had that horse. I was pregnant of that horse, so that the energy of the horse, it felt like, oh, but that's my kid, right? Growing in me. So the picture became even more valuable. So I made a poster with her name on it, with picture. Now it's in my house. And it was a sort of first opportunity to get to know her when I couldn't see her yet.
Thank you for sharing that, Esther.
Let's see, I don't have much objects at home now where I live, but every time I always, when I think of childhood memories, the one thing I think about was when I was small. There was this show a long time on television when we had one TV station that you would know, Alyssa, Fall Guy, and he drove a 4x4 truck. And one Christmas, I got a small little 4x4 truck that could climb over anything and everything, and that was always my mom said I played with the truck, I slept with the truck on the bed and everything like that, and play with it until it was no longer playable with. So That's every time I think of a happy childhood memory for me, I always go back to that particular truck, and and the kind of just the joy of having it and playing with it and everything. And every time I talk to my children about toys I have, I always tell them that was one of my favorite toys. That truck. I used to go everywhere with me and everything like that.
Can you share with us, Leslie, your ticket? Yes to both. Multitasking. That's fine. That's fine.
Sorry, I'm trying to be present, as you know. It's hard for me to think of any particular object, but I would have to say, especially for the past year, a really good cup of coffee, that first cup of coffee in the morning. That, yes.
Yeah, I feel like I had one of those today, and I closed my eyes and I just tears came to my eyes, tears of pure joy.
But I think apart from the, it's a sensory thing as well. It's the smell. It reminds me of, it gives me memories as well, subconsciously, so I think it's a whole, apart from the caffeine, but yeah, it's a sensory thing.
And I always love to walk in Port of Spain. That's the Hester now. In our capital city, there's a place where they actually brew coffee in the early morning called Hong Wing. And when you get that smell, and in Port of Spain in our capital in the morning, if you're walking through that, it's memory invoking. It's also like, yeah, wow, okay, I know I am. Yeah, it wakes you up also,
And that I asked you that so that you could feel that sense of when you have a visceral memory like that, just feel where you feel that in your body. What lights up, what relaxes, what changes from where you might be. And the breath is fundamental. It is the bracket of our life. You count your life between the first breath that you take and the last breath that you take. It is fundamentally unconscious. The fact that we breathe while we sleep is incredible. And also, the breath is a very, very gentle way to change your physiological state. It's interesting to me that the people who use breath, consciously harness breath, if you look at free divers, if you look at people in the military, if you look at yogis, singers, and actors, Hester, you would know, being trained in the theater, if you change your breathing pattern, you can evoke an emotion by changing the way you breathe. And that has to do both with the way your body interprets the breath and what it actually physiologically does for you. So what we can do now is we start the experiential part of it. So Hester, I see you sitting on your sit bones. You're ready. All right, Rishi, you're sitting back. Now, sitting on your sit bones is something that dancers do. And it's a little tricky to explain to a Trinidadian guy, but what you're really doing is sitting up. And then you take your hands like this. Interestingly, if you put your hands like this, this is kind of what your ribs do. Your ribs go forward and flare at the same time. So every time you take a breath in, your ribs go up and out at the same time. And if these are your ribs, your diaphragm on the bottom is attached to your ribs, and your diaphragm is a kind of fibrous muscle that really, when you begin to activate your diaphragm, the way that you breathe changes. You all both have children. Belly breathing, which we're going to experiment with, is what we do as children. When you see a toddler flat out asleep and their whole stomach is sinking in and coming back up, sinking in and coming back up, the way that we really exchange oxygen, that kind of changes as we get older unless we really train it in. Okay, so now take your, okay, Rishi, back to you. You're still not sitting on your sit bone. So you take your hands that I had shaped like ribs, Now, I'm gonna ask you to grab your butt. Now it's your butt. Okay. So one hand on either side, and you just kind of get your butt cheeks out from under you so that you're sitting on the bony part. You know? Right, now you could let go. It's okay, Rishi. It's, you know, yeah, among friends. Rishi's like, I grab my what? You're muted.
I do exercises with kettlebell swings. So I'm familiar with. It's more like you're hinging your hip
Yes.
in a way to be able to upright your spine. So yeah.
That's right. So you're sitting on your sit bones now. So you're hinged. You're feeling your seat. Now just drop your shoulders, Rishi. Relax your shoulders. Let your shoulder blades just fall back.
I'm trying to avoid the pain I'm having.
Yeah. Now I should say, you know how you were resourced. So if something doesn't feel good for you, just ease off. Okay. Just give yourself some space in your neck. Now, your dominant hand, put that on your belly. And you're going to take a breath through your nose and send it down to your hand. Right, so nice and easy. In, 2, 3, out, 2, 3. And if you feel a little self-conscious and you want to take your camera off, that's fine. In, 2, 3, out, 2, 3. And keep that going and just notice what is happening in your body. Be with yourself and your breath. Feel the air passing over your top lip and coming back out. And when that starts to get comfortable, when you get to the inhale, you hold for the same count. So you breathe in, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3. And if that's you feel a strain, just do it for a 2 count. And just notice what that feels like to hold the breath on the top and the bottom of the breath. If you start to feel lightheaded or off balance, just go back to the in and out. Right, and just come back. Feel yourself seated and come back to the room. Imagine 17,000 times a day. Now, when we're talking about breathwork for integral change, the change first, we have to be resourced. So when we talk about resourcing, we're looking to resource ourselves. And the first and freest thing that we have is our breath. When we learn to fuel ourselves better, we are filled up. We can find more power, more ease, more space, more patience. I mean, if we put gas in our cars, we can see the difference when we go from 92 to 95 octane. Imagine if we breathe a little better. Breath is the fuel, the first fuel of our bodies. Right? And I mean, for me, it's a really good thing that my body breathes itself, because I mean, 17,000 times, that's a lot to remember. You know, that's just a lot of work. So when you think about breath, when I think about breath, I kind of think mostly about yogis, and there's the science of pranayama is a very, very specific ways. When you talk about pranayama, it means either withholding or retaining the breath. So the breath is consciously manipulated to achieve particular effects. Now, what this can be used for when you get into a situation where you have a startle response, or you go into flight, fright, freeze, or fawn. So when your body tells you that something scares you, one of the first things that might happen is that you hold your breath. Your body tightens, and even your breath stops. And sometimes you have a perceived threat. It's not that something is in the bushes to get you. Maybe you're a little tired, maybe you didn't sleep enough, maybe somebody's asking you for something that you can't give them right now, or they're too loud, or something is going on, or you have a concern about something. Yes, Rashid, tell me.
No, it's interesting you bring up that point, because roughly about 5 years ago, I had some serious back issues. And so I had to went by a doctor and I went into rehab. And one of the first things I learned about myself in the rehab when you're going through the stretches and everything is that it told me your first mistake you make is that when you go into the stretch, you hold your breath. And you're not supposed to hold your breath. You're supposed to breathe through the stretch in motion, because by holding the breath, you actually put in more force on the muscle, and it's not forcing. The muscles are not relaxing.
Absolutely.
So most people, when they stretch, they know they go and they feel a little stretch. They tend to hold their breath. Even when I did massages afterwards, the massage was there, and if you feel the pain, your first thing is to hold, and it's like, no, you have to breathe through whatever pain you feel and stuff like that. It allows the muscles to relax and everything.
Absolutely. And that is a really important point, Rishi, because sometimes we don't know. We hold, we know that we have a body, but we experience the world through our bodies. And we think, but if your body is the body will protect itself. Primarily, your body wants to protect itself. So you are having a reaction and your body is being triggered. If you learn to recognize when you're being triggered, you can release that. So if you think about, nature, it's incredible. If we look to nature, we can see so many things. So if you have a gazelle running, the lion chases the gazelle. It's usually the lioness, but lioness catches the gazelle, clamps onto the gazelle, and the gazelle instinctively realizes that it has tried to flee. So now it freezes, and maybe the lion lets it go and walks off. Maybe it wasn't that hungry, it walks off. After a while, you will see motion returning. At first, the legs will kick, it will shiver. But we as humans often don't let ourselves go through that full emotional range. And that means that we retain stress in our bodies. And sometimes even attempting to release that stress through massage or through stretches, through exercises, we continue to guard in an unconscious way. And breath is one of the ways that we can very, very gently release the physical stress, breathe through it, and allow our bodies to come back to a place closer to equilibrium, and continue to come closer and closer to equilibrium, to a point where we're able to regulate the body, deal with more stress, and move more smoothly through the world. So thank you for bringing that up. That is really, really cool.
Can I ask you something, Alyssa?
Yes.
So did you train yourself in this, where you start realizing where, you know, where your body is responding, and then they don't be, I'm in the toilet, so I won't be disturbed.
Yes.
But so
The unrolls are awesome.
so yeah, sorry, but did you train that to realize? Because what happens with me is that I only realize when it's really big, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so I'm aware of my body and stress when the stress
Mhm.
is really high, and then it tends to be really difficult. So how would
Right.
you approach this exercise?
If you can, it takes practice. If you can begin to notice when you get really stressed. Hi, David. Thanks for joining us. We're talking about breathing. We're talking about inspiration, devotion, resource, and connection. Yeah, I'm glad to have you with us. So if you begin to notice, you can notice when it's really big and you're really stressed out. If when you realize, you can take a breath and practice over time. Two things. When you get really stressed, you may begin to be able to get less stressed from that point of being really stressed. And two, you begin to notice sooner and smaller. You know, with anything that you do, sometimes when you're not used to it, it takes a larger amount for it to be noticeable. And then as you get more proficient, very, very fine distinctions become apparent. Yeah, and I will show you now, because what you're actually doing is using breathing to take your body from that instinctual response and calm the body down. So you will reduce the amount of stress hormones in your body, and that stress reaction will shorten and smaller. Okay, this now, you all, again, it is, children are amazing, because this is something that your body does naturally. And when you deploy it, when you use it consciously, it is amazing. So if you've seen a toddler, or you've recognized yourself when you have really cried, I mean, you really cried, you were upset, and you're stopping crying, there is they go, that double breath and sharp exhale is one of the fastest ways to shut down your stress response. You are sending oxygen and you're hyperoxygenating and you're interrupting the stress response. So you're stopping that amygdalic response. So let us, you breathe in through the nose, and when you get to the top, you breathe in through the nose again, and then you exhale through the mouth. So, and, all right, you need to sit again on your sit bones, Rishi. And Hester, when you take the breath, put your hand again on your tummy and see if you can direct the breath low down. So, it takes a while to get used to, and it feels kind of odd, and sometimes like you get a strange sensation in your head. When you add a little more oxygen to your system, it does, it feels a little odd sometimes. While you'll practice that, let me just see what's in the chat. Yeah, cool. And really sigh out, because when you exhale forcefully, you're removing carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide is what in your bloodstream tells your body that it needs to breathe, because your body wants to let go of carbon dioxide and bring in oxygen, right? So when you practice this, 2 ins, let's go again. In, out. In, out. And as you continue to practice it, you realize that it doesn't come from the chest, it comes from lower down. Yeah, so maybe put one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, and you're directing the breath down to the hand on your belly. All right. And when you breathe out, you feel your belly coming back toward you. How am I doing for time, Hester?
Well, there's nothing.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. How does that feel? How does that feel for you, Hester?
So I was just asking a question to you, but I can do it just by.
Tell me.
So, well, 2 things. So what I experience is that I'm able to do it because I know the breath work, but I also experience that it's a little tensed. So I feel this. So I should do it more often to get the. You know what happens is that I'm going to do it really good, right? So
Gotcha.
what happens is what happens is that I become aware of where I have stress in the body now, right? So I become more aware. So maybe that's more what I experience.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. So now I feel my back, and now I feel, well, these things.
Yeah. Yeah, Leslie's saying that she needs to concentrate. Yeah, it takes some practice. And if you keep doing it, it starts to become instinctual, but at first it just feels strange. And sometimes different parts of your body tingle and you're like, what is going on? But if you try doing it when you're really upset, it works. What about you, Rishi?
What I realized, because actually, I think the last 6 months or probably last year, following this guy, Wim Hof.
Wim Hof, yes.
And I employ it, especially when I exercise. I try to do very heavy weights. So my wife would say, "Why are you doing heavy weights?" But you realize after you've done a set of heavy weights and you're feeling tired, when I take deep breaths in and exhale, even for like 15-20 minutes, or even if I'm doing like high intensity training and you take that 20-30 minutes, 30-second, 20-second break, and you take deep breaths in and deep breaths out, I realize that your heart rate just comes down really quickly, and you're ready to go again to do our next weight. Whereas when you don't do that, and you sit down, you're like, and you're breathing. It takes you a longer time. I find it took me a longer time to recover, to go back again and do what I was doing. So I realized, taking those deep breaths in and exhaling, especially from the belly, the diaphragm, as opposed to, I realized early on that I breathe a lot from my chest. It's very shallow. It's not deep breathing. So I try to consciously, especially when I'm exercising or doing like high intensity, those deep belly breaths, I think really gets the heart to come back down, gets me to recover quickly, and then back again.
Absolutely, because what you're doing is actually clearing your body of carbon dioxide. Because when you pat, that is what your body is trying to do. Your body is trying to clear itself of carbon dioxide. So yeah, doing that belly breathing. What you can do is like sometimes before you sit down to have a meal, do 3 or 5 belly breaths. And just intersperse it throughout your day to give yourself a trigger. And 3 times for the day, do 3 or 5 sets of box breaths. You find that if you do the hold at the top and the hold at the end, that effect gets even more intense. Yeah. David, you want to share with us? Are you able to? And if not, that's fine. Yeah. Speaking of being energized, let's do something that is really is. I mean, I don't want to, it energizes you without the caffeine rush. And this is really, you're gonna engage a diaphragm. Okay. And again, sometimes it just helps to put a hand so that you know what you're aiming for, because it's kind of like training wheels. At first, you need to give yourself a little stimulus to focus, because you're trying to, and don't try to figure it out so much. Feel it, and it's okay. There is, you breathe yourself. You're just experimenting and playing and feeling your breath. Now, take this one very carefully. Also, be aware of how resourced you are. And this is not recommended for persons on the first 3 days of their period, women on the first 3 days, and people who menstruate on the first 3 days of their period. It's not really recommended. Right? It's called breath of fire. In pranayama, it's called kapalbhati. You can really charge yourself up. I mean, yeah. So I'm going to do it, and I'll do it slowly. I don't know how well you'll see it, but let me know. So all you're doing is exhaling. You're focusing on exhaling through the nose. Again, be gentle, sit up, be relaxed, but this is what you're doing. You don't focus on the inhale, just focus on the exhale. And you really want that hand to come in every time. So your belly will be going back, right? You all know where the diaphragm is, your diaphragm will be going back. So just focus on the exhale and exhale. And it'll feel kind of weird because your body is like, excuse me. And maybe your back might start to tingle. And if you need to, stop for a little bit or go a little bit slower, but just exhale and feel that coming through the nose. In and out, Rishi. Just breathe in and out. Belly breaths, belly breaths, belly breaths. Go easy and do belly breaths now to come back. Like any exercise, this is exercise like any exercise. So when you begin to exercise the diaphragm like that, it begins to feel weird. So come back to the belly breaths in and out, and just relax. And that one is one that you can practice, and it's really, really, if you do that first thing in the morning, I will charge you up. And then, if you begin to practice, you get to a point where you could spend 3 minutes doing and really, it really just keeps you going. You might not want to be facing anybody. We are cognizant that this is the time of COVID, and at first you might get a little, a little snap coming there, so don't be, facing anyone's direction. But that's when you can practice. Then we'll go to, I'm explaining these so that when you practice, it is, how the patterns go. And again, the root of the etymology of inspiration, it comes from an old French word, inspirer, to blow into or to breathe upon. to put the spirit into. And when I think about that, I think about, the Leslie's a painter. So, the, tell me which one, is it on when there's the finger of God? Yes, absolutely. Yes, that one. So putting the spirit into, energizing yourself is what you're doing when you're breathing. I also think of, if we think about the Bible as a metaphor, in Genesis it says, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. That idea of life itself requiring the enlivening that breath brings is a very, very powerful thing. So when you really inspire yourself, you fuel yourself, you fill yourself up, you energize yourself with your breath, you become powerful, you become resourced, you become able to move not only yourself and hold yourself and resource yourself, then you yourself become a force for change into the world. As you inspire yourself, you can become an inspiration. And that, I think that when you think about the breath moving you so you can move, others is something that we have to take into consideration. So with movement, walking is another thing I'm interested in, and walking is a controlled fall. Movement, the in and out, the ebb and flow, the body doesn't hold on to one breath. We keep breathing, and there's the devotion. The breath doesn't stop. If the breath stops, we stop, literally. That's how triage works. When you go to a hospital, the person who is priority is the person who is not breathing. You can do without water, you can do without food, you can do without joy for a longer time, but when your breath stops, you stop. That's it. You have moments. You're literally on the shore. If you think about your breath as the wave goes in and it goes out. It goes in and it goes out all the time, over and over and over. And that aspect of the repetition of the breath brings us to the point of devotion. When you think about devotion, it's about doing something lovingly, attentively, consistently, over and over and over and over. Refining it. You're refining your art. You're getting better and better. You're engaging in higher and higher, in truer and truer equilibrium. When you tune an instrument, you go back to it and you tune large first, and then the tuning gets very, very fine. And when you look at the incremental improvement that someone who has mastered an instrument has, the devotion that it takes is incredible. It's not simply work, it's not simply practice, but it's when practice crosses into devotion. And if you think about yourself breathing in 17,000 times a day and breathing out 17,000 times a day in service of your body, that has to be devotion. Yeah. So in terms of going from side to side, let's do alternate nostril breathing. The pranayamic name for it is anulom vilom. Now, this is your thumb, this is annular, your ring finger, and so you take your thumb, you block the nostril on the same side with your thumb, and then breathe out through the other nostril. Breathe out, breathe in, ring finger, opposite nostril, breathe out, and in, and switch, out, in, out, in. Switch again, and keep that going. And be curious about your breath. You can slow it down. Again, you might want to put the other hand on your belly because you're directing that breath down to your diaphragm. You're directing that breath past your diaphragm down to your navel. And just notice if you've only been breathing through one nostril, because sometimes you realize that one side is totally blocked. And you're like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as you continue that breath is said to balance you. So sometimes you get stuck in planning or you get stuck in creative. That breath brings you to a creative balance space. The left side in some traditions is thought to be a moon side, and the right side is thought to be a sun side. And when you get that balance, think about the dawn, when the sun and the moon are passing each other, and you get that amazing, amazing series of colors in the sky. That balance again through the movement is important and very, very beautiful. Right? So that is something that you can practice. So come back to center. And as you release the nostril, again, go back to a couple deep breaths here, down to your belly, in and out. Again, because this is new, just notice if a part of your body, are your hands colder or your feet colder than they were before? You know, sometimes, you know, the side of your knee tingles a little bit, or your back says, hey, I'm here. Just feel what it feels like in your body. Yeah. And the last pattern we'll do is, I call it Hoy heart breath. When you are announcing yourself, you know, sometimes, you know, if you're looking in at somebody, you knock, you say hello, hi. Or if, you know, there's a knock, 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 who's there? And I saw there's a basketball player, the first deaf basketball player in the American NBA was a Mormon guy by the name of Lance Alred. And when he started playing professional basketball, he would get, I don't know, I think you call it penalties. He would get a lot of, the referees would blow him a lot because the referees would think that he was ignoring it, but he was deaf. So his ability to read a basketball game was unparalleled because he had to be able to take in the entire game and do what he had to do. So his knowledge of where everyone was on the court at every time was unparalleled. And something that he would do is what he called heart knocks. And as adults, we often don't get enough touch. And when you put your hand on your heart, there's something very, very comforting about that. The heartbeat is the first sound that we know. And we know that before we know anything. And when you, a patting is a very, very comforting gesture. Sometimes you can just rest your hand on your heart, because your heart is something that's amazing, because your heart is beating itself. Your heart is beating itself and you are breathing. And sometimes if you can't do anything else, you can put your hand on your heart or put two hands on your heart and take a breath and just be grateful that you can breathe and your heart is beating. And sometimes in a moment, that is literally all you are able to do. And that's enough. Right now, in this moment, your heart is breathing, your heart is beating, you are breathing. Right in this moment, You are resourced. Right in this moment, you have everything that you need for your life in this moment. Right in this moment, you are safe. Right in this moment, you're okay. And what you can do is when you feel your heart and you feel that gratitude, feel your heart beating, you can gently just tap on your heart. Just lightly tap. Rest your hand again. And just be curious. It's a little knock, 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 knock. Who's there? Your heart. And that itself is another source of inspiration. We live in a space between two breaths. The first breath that we take when we come into the world as a baby who is cared for on some level. Someone cared for us. Someone held us as we breathed our first breath. And every day we have 17,000 inhales and 17,000 exhales, and we move through the world on the river of our breath, supported, fueled by our breath. We're like a ship that sails on the wind of our breath. And when we exit, it's the point when we leave even our bodies behind, and that last breath escapes on a sigh. And between those brackets of breath, the magic of our lives. And sometimes in these uncertain times, all we can do is take a breath and just feel the wonder that we are. And sometimes we might need to take 2 inhales and an exhale and feel the feeling of awe. That is the feeling of being alive. You just go, oh, ah, wow. And in that moment, we can be inspired. We are connected. We're resourced. We have changed ourselves. We can make change. We are spirit, we have bodies, we have minds. We get to breathe and we get to be breathed. And we can make room for wonder. Because we are simply amazing. Each one of us, just as we are and as we're becoming. I thank you for breathing with me, And I hope that you will continue to practice and continue to explore, continue to sail upon the winds of your breath, to assure that you have no idea how magnificent it is going to be. So I thank you so much. Namaste. I can, would you like to ask any questions before we close fully?
So, just one thing, if you don't mind, I want to continue listening. There's the food out there, and I haven't.
Yes.
Is it okay if I just?
Yes, Hester. Yes, Hester. Of course, of course.
But I'm still listening.
Yes, of course. Thank you for being with us, Hester.
You see, this was fun.
Yeah.
This was better. I think, yeah. I mean, my oldest daughter, for example, she gets very anxious at times when she's doing stuff. I keep telling her, you have to learn to breathe. And I think that's something that we take for granted. I guess because we do it so unconsciously, you know, breathing, we take it for granted, the importance of it and the importance of breath and understanding. You know, it is part of our physiological nature and the impact it has on us. So even when she gets agitated, I tell her sometimes you need to have to just calm down, breathe in, breathe out, and just, you know, try to calm yourself down. So I think sometimes we really take that part of it for granted.
If you with her, if you show her the double hitch breath, there is the Breathwork on the site, and if you like, I can send that to you. And you know, just tell her, you know, instead of making it, you know, you treat it like a game. You see, try and see how it feels, and children get it really quickly. And when they learn it, then they do it unconsciously. It becomes a learned skill, so they don't think about it, so they default it. So when she knows that she can calm herself down, it can be really powerful for anxiety, for sure. Yeah. Awesome. Was there anything else? Yeah, Leslie's saying you guys can do it as a family. Yeah, there's one that's we didn't do today called the Darth. I call it the Darth Vader breath. Kids love that. And it's very, very good for if you have to do speaking and that kind of thing. It really prepares you to speak. And I mean, who doesn't want to sound like Darth Vader? I mean, they crack up. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll try before my session tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Cool. So I think we can wrap up. Again, thank you so much. Thank you, Leslie. I know that you are super busy. Thank you, Hester. I know that, you know, Dutch dinner time is inviolable. Thank you for the encouragement and for being with us through this. And thanks for joining, Rishi, because, yeah, we were going over to our next session.
Yes, and Alyssa, I want to thank you as well, because you have been busy all day. So really to take this time to go through this with us, and the opportunity to experience this, for me, it was a wonderful way to close this day.
Oh,
and
thank you so much.
I'm really going to practice with this. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.